Have you ever felt curious about public speaking, or wondered what opportunities could open up for you and your business if you could face your fears and give it a try? I'm joined by Jackie Goddard, a voice and acting coach who's here to share with you the benefits of public speaking and some tips to get you started in this episode of Architecture Business Club, a weekly podcast for solo and small firm architecture practice owners just like you who want to build a profitable, future-proof architecture business that fits around their life. I'm John Clayton, your host, and if you're a small practice leader or sole practitioner in architecture, struggling to find clarity or reach your goals, consider working with me. I offer personalised one-to-one support through coaching, consulting and mentoring. This tailored approach helps you navigate your unique path to success. Whether it's growing your practice, working fewer hours or building your team, I've got you covered. Just click the link in the show notes to book a call with me to discuss your options or email John, that's Jon, at architecturebusinessclub.com for more information. Now let's discuss public speaking. Jackie Goddard is a former fashion designer and recovering actor who spent 30 years working in and around the arts, most recently as a voice and acting coach. Through a company, Power to Speak, Jackie now works with entrepreneurs, business leaders and teams to make them excited about sharing their ideas and developing their power to speak. She's often asked to speak to audiences about public speaking, but also to share her thoughts on topics like the acting process, resilience, joy and failure. Since 2020, Jackie's hosted a podcast talking to speakers, authors, actors and entrepreneurs to discover how they use their voice, story and creativity for their work and well-being. Jackie, welcome to Architecture Business Club.
Thank you for having me, John. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. Jackie, I know that outside of the work that you do, you're quite a keen walker. Could you tell me a little bit about that and where you like to go walking?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to live on the south coast. So I'm between the forest and the sea. So the New Forest in one direction and the coast in the other. So I love to walk. I've always liked walking. And here we've got the ponies in the forest, and yeah, it's just beautiful. And I'm quite near a place called Lymington, and the seawall looks out at the Isle of Wight across the Solent. And no matter what the weather, it's just a beautiful place to be. I used to run, actually. That's where I used to go running, but but my knees aren't quite the same as they used to be. So I've had to slow down to a walk. But yeah, I do enjoy that. And I go out walking most days if I can.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. It's a part of the world that I've not explored as much as I would have liked. But yeah, it sounds like a lovely place to be. And I'm a big walker as well. I used to do when we lived up in Lancashire, I used to enjoy going up to the Lake District quite frequently to do hill walking. But since we moved to Norfolk, there's not quite so many hills for me to walk up. But we do have some lovely coastal walks. I do enjoy that too.
Yeah.
So, Jackie, we're going to talk about public speaking so that architecture practice owners can understand what a great opportunity it is, and also to give them some tips on how to get started. So to begin, could we talk about how architects and architecture practice owners could benefit from public speaking?
Well, anybody and everybody can obviously benefit from public speaking, and it's something that it's fundamental, isn't it? I mean, to speak to an audience, whether it's an audience of one or an audience of thousands, you are communicating, and it's the best way to get your point across, to share your message, to develop your personal brand, develop you as a person, to build relationships, build connection, build rapport. It's doesn't matter what business you are in, those opportunities to speak to an audience are fundamental to every business, aren't they, really? And architects have, for me, being a bit of a creative myself, a bit of a creative bod, I love the creativity that comes with architecture. And there are so many stories around buildings, and there's so many opportunities to talk about not only the technical side of architects' work, but also the design side. And so for architects, I would imagine it's just a really great opportunity to share their knowledge and to share their experience and to build their brand and their business.
So it's interesting. One of the things you mentioned there was about communication. Fundamentally, it's probably one of the best ways to be able to communicate what it is that you do and how you help people. And actually, if you're able to get over some of the fears and do that to a room of people, to get that message across to a lot of people in one go. So there's potentially some huge benefits there. As you say, architecture is an industry, and in the practice of architecture, there's going to be so many stories there, things that other people are going to be interested in, that when you're in the day-to-day thick of it, sometimes you don't always see those opportunities and stories that we could share. So there's some rich pickings there, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just the history around buildings, just so many stories.
So how common is the fear of public speaking?
Well, and I'm sure you must have heard the old adage that when asked, more people would rather be in the coffin at a funeral than they would be speaking the eulogy. And apparently, according to the Mental Health Institute, there is 73% of people are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of dying, which is pretty shocking, isn't it, really? But yeah,
That's unbelievable.
It seems to be a fear that is at our core somehow. And whether that goes back to something that happened in childhood, during school, kids being kids, I'm not sure. Or whether it's just that kind of fundamental fear of being shown up, of being judged, of not being liked, of saying something stupid, of being ridiculed. And I think that is at the core of all of us. Nobody wants to look stupid or sound silly, do they? So I think that's the reason.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I think of my earliest memories of standing in front of a room full of people and having to speak. And one of those was when I was at school, in high school, and I had to stand up in front of the English class and talk about something. I think it was like talk about a hobby for like probably only 5 minutes, but it was absolutely petrifying. And you just knew that like nobody was really particularly interested in the room. It wasn't like it was an engaged audience. I remember one of the boys got up and talked about looking after his hamster or his guinea pig or something. I think at the time I was quite into video games and nerdy stuff like that. So I think I stood up and talked about that for a few minutes. And there was a whole host of other things that people talked about, but it was quite scary, as a sort of, I guess, a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, when you're quite self-conscious of yourself, to stand up in that room of, I guess, about 30 other kids and the English teacher and to talk. And so that was probably not a positive experience. It was
no, and I think the thing is that we all had to do those sort of things. But we're given no preparation, which is a big thing with public speaking. You need to prepare. You need to know what it is that you're talking about, and it's not enough to say, right, your homework is go and talk about or write something about this topic and then come back and do it. You need to kind of get people confident and comfortable about what they're saying. I mean, when I was teaching kids many years ago, I used to do a project with them around their hobbies and their topics. But rather than just getting them to stand up and talk about it, I used to put them in little groups, and they'd pick a topic between them, and then they would make up stories about it. They'd draw pictures on it. They'd work together and collaborate. And actually, that then became a joyful experience and an exciting experience for them to work together and to bring every sort of element, a bit of design, a little bit of words and dance, even however they wanted to express that topic. But when you just sort of say to a 14-year-old, can you stand up and talk about your hamster for 15 minutes? It's like, of course, you're going to be like a deer in the headlights. It's just need a little bit of preparation and a little bit of fun. You know, there's a lot of the work I do, even with the adults, especially with the adults, that is around getting them to play, find the playfulness in what it is that they're talking about. Because unless you enjoy what you're speaking about, unless you can find the enjoyment in it, then your audience aren't going to enjoy listening to you, because they will mirror how you're feeling. If you stand up feeling awkward and uncomfortable, that's exactly how your audience will feel. But if you get up and you're excited and enthusiastic, that transfers, that your audience will mirror that, and they'll be happy to listen.
That makes a lot of sense. And the way that you described that exercise with the kids as well, about them working on it together first, that looking back, that would have made me feel better had we done some group work and talked about it before actually just having to kind of get up there and do that talk. So how can we turn that fear of public speaking, how can we turn that into that feeling of excitement that you mentioned?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's finding the enjoyment in what you're talking about. I would say 70% of the work that I do with clients is not about the speaking. It's not about the voice. Obviously, I do warm up, I do breathing exercises. We do the organs of articulation and the pyramid breath and all of that acting training that I had. But I would say 70% of the work I do is getting people comfortable and in believing what it is that they're talking about and playing with it. As I said, the realization for me in this work came from the fact that when I was an actor, the bit that I enjoyed most was when, the rehearsal process was always great fun. Again, it was a collaborative thing. I wasn't doing this on my own, although I'd had monologues and audition pieces that I would have to learn on my own. But once I got to the point where I knew them so well, I always say memorize to improvise, because if you know something that well, that it's almost like second nature. It's ingrained. It's like muscle memory. Then when you step in front of an audience, you can be playful. You can play with what it is that you're speaking about. And I knew that once I got to the point where I'd done enough work that I couldn't wait to show it to somebody else. I couldn't wait to get on the stage and be part of that performance. And that's where I like to get people to, is that they are excited. They can't wait. That, of course, there's fear and anxiety. I still get a little bit anxious I get anxious like everybody else does. But if the feeling you get in your body when you are anxious is exactly the same feeling you get when you are excited. They're both aroused emotions. They both send cortisol surging around your body and your heart beating faster, sweaty palms and all of that. They're exactly the same feeling. But that feeling when you are anxious comes because you are expecting something bad to happen. Whereas with excitement, when you get that feeling and you are feeling excited, it's because you are expecting something good to happen. So it's really just not overly easy, but if you can kind of change your mindset, or if you can, you get the butterflies in your tummy and all of that kind of knees knocking kind of feeling, is to look at it as you being excited. You've got the reason that you are feeling that way is because you are excited.
I was just thinking about another occasion when I had to speak in public. Probably the next big memory that I have of doing this was speaking at my wedding, when I had to give a speech. And what you just described, that thing of planning it and finding ways to feel excited about it, so that it was something that you were looking forward to sharing with the room. That, I guess, that was kind of that feeling that I had when I did that speech at my wedding, because I was still nervous, and there was some family members there from my wife's side of the family that I either hadn't met or didn't know very well, along with friends and family. But I guess that the difference was that, for one, I was much more prepared. Elements of the speech that I was really looking forward to sharing, because I was thinking, this will go down well, this might get a laugh, that sort of thing. And also that it's something like that, like everybody wants you to succeed. It wasn't that feeling of like, I'm talking to a room full of people who are like going to start leaving the room if it's really terrible. They're there for you and they're supporting you. So it was a very different feeling to that memory from the school days.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That if we are planning to do any public speaking or want to do any public speaking, that if we can plan it so that we know it inside out, what we're going to be talking about. And you mentioned that thing about, I love that suggestion, the memorize to improvise, so that you almost like, you know it so well that you can deviate a little bit. You can go off track a little bit and you're always going to find your way back because you know what you're talking about so well with the preparation that you've done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't recommend, having a 2,000 word essay that you then have to memorize word for word. But if you're telling stories, then the stories don't need to be scripted. But I always work with clients on a journey through a presentation. So we find what those stories are that you can hang that point that you want to make on. So if you need to get a point across, what's the story that's going to land with the audience? What is going to make that point memorable that they will go away and still remember it? And so you can kind of just know the stories really well, and you know that story takes you into that story, and there's a reason, and so there's a flow to your presentation. But if I've got stories and if I can make connections between one point to a next with the story, then actually it doesn't matter if you sort of deviate. You'll get yourself back on track, and you'll make sure that you hit the points that you need to make, and your audience will go away knowing what you wanted them to go away knowing.
Oh, that's a really good tip. I mean, people love a good story, and like what you've described, that way of weaving in stories and using storytelling as part of your talk or your speech or presentation. I mean, stories they're so much more memorable, aren't they? Like not just for the host, like the person delivering the talk, but also for the people listening in, that they're far more likely to remember something via a story than otherwise if we're just sort of bombarding them with facts or figures or like a gazillion slides with loads of information on. So that, I love that. That's a really good idea.
And you can't tell a story monotone. There has to be, if you're telling a story, your voice, you'll automatically, you'll get excited or you'll get sad, or there's a variation in your voice. There's vocal variety, and rather than just delivering something on a monotone. When you tell a story, you automatically have vocal variety.
So if you're planning to use stories, then do they always have to be your own stories, or can you use stories that are like other people's stories? Remember, don't forget to download the Architecture Business Blueprint, the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists and architectural designers. You can grab the blueprint without any charge at architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint. And if you're enjoying this episode, then please leave a 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show.
Yeah, a story is a story. I mean, what's good about your own stories is that you will never forget them. So, there's never a time you're going to forget your own story. Plus, if you tell your own stories, it gives you a credibility, and it builds trust because the audience begin to get to know you. And like you were saying about when you were speaking at your wedding, it's very much about the audience. It's always about the audience. It's not about you as a speaker. It's about the people that you're talking to. So you were excited to speak to that audience because you knew the parts of your presentation, parts of your speech that would really resonate with them. So once that's the connection then. So, even as an architect, you're talking to a room full of architects, you're talking to a room full of builders, whatever. Who are they? What stories can you tell that will really resonate with them? it's always about them. It's not about you. So when you're finding stories, whether they're your own or somebody else's, it doesn't really matter. But just make sure that that they are stories that will really resonate with that particular audience.
I love that idea that it's almost like you pass those stories that you could use through a filter and make sure that they are a good fit for the audience that's going to be present when you're delivering this talk, to make sure that it's going to land with them. It's something that they're going to resonate with, that they're going to enjoy hearing about, or it's going to elicit some response, some emotional response from them, or some engagement, that they're going to really resonate with that story that you're sharing.
Yes. It was Maya Angelou said, people won't remember what you did, they won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And so if you can find a story that resonates, it's about them, it's not about you. So don't tell stories that are you being self-indulgent, that are you being kind of, oh, look, this is what I've been through, woe is me, or aren't I fantastic, what an amazing person I am. It's not about you. So find those stories that are going to resonate and build that emotional connection with the audience.
Jackie, for anyone that's curious about public speaking, what first steps would you recommend?
Do you mean in terms of writing something to speak, or just in getting practice speaking?
Well, both, I guess. I mean, as you know, I'm going to be speaking later in the year at a conference in London called London Builds on the skills and marketing stage. And that, for me, that's probably going to be it is my first public speaking thing. Obviously, I speak on the podcast every week, but it's not live in a room full of people. For somebody like me, or any of the listeners that are listening to this thinking, oh, well, I'd like to get started, I'd curious about doing a talk, because this sounds intriguing. It sounds like there could be some benefits for me. Like, where would they even begin? Like, you mentioned there's a couple of things there you mentioned already about planning the talk and also practicing the talk, but like, what are the first steps to do? I'm assuming it starts with planning, that it's more about kind of planning things out and working through your ideas before, because if you haven't planned anything, you're not going to have anything to practice. Is that right?
No, of course. No, absolutely. If like you have a deadline, you have a talk coming up, you know who your audience will be. So it's a conference that's related to your industry. So you know the type of people that will be there. The first thing that I do before I even start working with a client is to say, get it all out of your head. So what do you want to say? This is the start. This bit is about you. So you know what you want the audience to go away with. You know what takeaways that you want them to have. So then get it all out of your head onto a piece of paper. Just write it all out. Could be bullet points, could be an essay. I mean, I've had clients come to me with a 2,000-word essay and expected that I would say to them, okay, go away and memorize that. It's beautifully written, well done. But actually what that is, it's a starting point to then find the story. So, okay, this is what you want to say, but then let's find the stories that are going to resonate, that are going to connect what you want to say to the audience. And then you can start planning, and then you can say, okay, well, that's really important. And I know this particular audience will really love that. And I can tell this story that will actually land that point really well. So then you can kind of pull out, I have a flow chart when I'm working with clients. So out of that, whatever you bring to me on that first day, we can start talking about, you've written it. What is the point behind this? What is the point for the audience? Because, as I say, the audience don't care about you. They only care about what it is that they're going to take away. So you can then start taking from that kind of brain dump, is what the way I put it is, Shelley, who we both know, said that I got her to throw up onto a page, basically. Everything that was in her head, she just went, bleh, and put it all out there on a page. And then we can start taking out the bits, putting it into the flow chart, saying, okay, well, how does that connect with that? Where do we want to land? What are the stories? What are the connections that we can make with the audience? So you begin by getting it all out of your head. I heard somebody say once that we are story hoarders. And so we keep all of these stories in our head, whether they're good ones, bad ones, personal ones, other people's. But because they're in our head, they have no beginning, middle, and end. So they kind of go round and round and round. So what you want to do is once you get them out onto a piece of paper, you can see what the beginning, the middle, and the end. You can see then, you can analyze it and say, well, what did I learn from that experience? And how then are my audience going to take away from that learning that I've come up with from that? So it's get it all out of your head, get it onto a piece of paper, and then start making the connections. It's almost like that mind map flow thing of, okay, well, that's really relevant to this point. That's really relevant to that point. And then once you've kind of got a shape, then speak it out loud to somebody else. I always say this, to speak it out loud to a human, preferably somebody that likes you, because you'll get rid of some of those nerves because you've actually said it out loud to somebody and somebody has listened, but also you'll get an understanding from them whether it's understandable, whether it makes sense, whether there's the flow is correct, whether there's words you're using that people don't understand. Because quite often, especially if you're speaking to industry, then you speak your own language within industries, but there might be people in that audience that don't understand the certain words or certain language you use. So how can you make that understandable? And if you speak it out loud to your partner, to your best friend or whatever, that might not be in your business, in your industry, then do they understand? Because so often we try to be this person within our industry that is important and credible and knowledgeable and all of those things. But actually, if there's people in the audience that aren't in that industry, it'll go over their heads and you've lost those people. So yes, get it out onto a piece of paper, speak it out loud, and then you can start refining and editing before you then start really learning it and beginning to play with it.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Jackie. That's really helpful for anyone that's thinking about getting started. I've heard you talk about the 3 B's. Could you tell me about those, please?
Well, this was just my simplified way of everything that I've spoken about so far. So the 3 B's are believe, breathe, and be prepared. So firstly, that content. So like I said, 70% of the work that I do is around getting people comfortable, making sure they believe what they're saying. Because if you don't believe what you're saying, the audience won't believe it either. And I know that from my acting background of being of dressing actors. I dressed actors for a couple of years before I went to drama school, and saying to them, how can you do that, which is so outside of your comfort zone, so outside of my comfort zone? How can you do that in front of an audience, whatever it might be? And one actor said to me, if you don't believe what you're doing, the audience won't either. And for me, that was a penny drop moment, because I then understood what an actor's job was. And the actor's job is not about you going out and playing a part. It's about being the part. And so it's the same when you're putting a speech out there or a talk or a presentation. You need to be authentic. You need to be believable. You need to believe what you're saying. If you go to see a school production of a Shakespeare play, you won't understand a word, because the kids don't understand a word. And so it's gobbledygook. It's a foreign language. If you go and see that same play performed by the Royal Shakespeare Company, you will understand every single word, because they do, because they've done the work. They know exactly what they're saying. They know the intention behind every word. They know the motivation. And so it's understandable. You'll laugh in the right places. You'll cry in the right places. And so you have to believe what you're saying. And if you don't believe what you're saying, that's when you get nervous. That's when you get uncomfortable. You can't look people in the eye. It's an uncomfortable feeling because you're waiting to be caught out. So make sure you believe what it is that you're saying. And then breathe. Speech is breath. So it's literally, again, I heard another voice coach say, we breathe in thoughts and we breathe out words. So learn how to breathe. Pyramid breath, using your diaphragm to breathe, to really use your breath to support your body. Because when you're nervous, you lose your breath. Because for everyday speech, we only use like the very top part of our lungs. So if that's all you're used to using, when the nerves kick in, it will go. So you need to learn how to breathe from your belly, and also breathe to calm your nerves as well, which is box breathing. So there are a couple of videos out there which I can give you the links to share if you like, so people can see what that is. And then be prepared is what it says on the tin. It's just, and everything that we've been speaking about is just making sure you know your stuff backwards. Visualization, using those the breathing techniques to get you focused, make sure that you're really in the right place, in the right mindset before you step on the stage, that everything is prepared. If the tech goes wrong, you can deal with it. All the slides are there, everything's in place. You feel good. You're looking your best, you're sounding your best, you're feeling your best, and that's all about having a good night's sleep, about looking after yourself before a big talk, because all of those things will really give you the foundation to be a confident and comfortable speaker.
I love that. And Jackie, you do have a PDF download that summarises those things that we've just talked through. Well, we'll share this link in the show notes as well, but it's subscribepage.io/speak with confidence. And people can go ahead and grab a copy of that for free.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jackie, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. What would be the main thing that you'd like people to take away from it?
Don't worry about worrying. We all worry about these things. Speaking is such a fantastic opportunity to share whatever it is that you've got to say, to share your business. So don't worry that you're worried about it. Everybody worries. We all have anxieties, and just download the download, have a read, and then take these opportunities with both hands and just go for it. Really, really get out there and be your authentic self. Be you. Show up with your personality. Show people who you really are, and don't be afraid.
I love that. Thanks, Jackie. Was there anything else you wanted to add about the topic that we haven't already covered today?
I don't think so, John. I think we've just about covered everything. Yeah. Thank you.
I think we have. I think we've done a great job. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you, and it's a regular question that I like to ask all of the guests on the show. I love to travel and to discover new places, and I just wondered if you could share with us one of your favourite places and what you love about it, and it can be near or far.
Well, I mean, I'd say the seawall around Lymington is absolutely beautiful, and just love being down here. I'm a Londoner by birth, so I've only been down here 15 years, 20 years. Can't remember now. I would say where in the world, though, I loved Rome. I loved it. Well, Italy itself, it's just gorgeous. But Rome, I was gobsmacked by the history, just walking amongst ancient monuments that have been there for thousands of years. And just, a beautiful, beautiful country. So that would definitely be one of my favourites.
I would love to visit Rome again. I visited, I guess I would have been in my early 20s, and it was a very boozy backpacking trip, I suppose, is what you'd call it. It was the first time a friend and I had gone sort of backpacking and travelling, and we did visit Italy, and we ended up spending, I think, about a week in Rome. So we had a really good time and a good look round, but at that point it was very much more about kind of, drinking beer rather than taking advantage of seeing all of the sights. So we did do the touristy stuff as well, but I would like to go back there as a grown-up now to actually go and enjoy it more fully, because I don't think I had a fully rounded experience of Rome the first time I was there.
No, it is beautiful. Sistine Chapel, and the whole walking through the Sistine Chapel was just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a fantastic place. Jackie, this has been an absolute pleasure. So thanks so much for joining me on the show. Could you remind everybody where is the best place to connect with you online?
Powertospeak.co.uk is my website, and you can find everything there. If you want to sign up to the newsletter there, I run a speaker club. If you are anywhere near the South Coast, I run an in-person speaker club, and I'm hoping to start an online one soon. So you can find out all about that there. And the newsletter, tips, techniques, every couple of weeks. So yeah, that's the best place. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, come and find me there.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Jackie.
Thank you, John. Been great.
Next time, I chat with Melanie Boylan about Google Business Profiles. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Architecture Business Club. If you liked this episode, think other people might enjoy it, or just want to show your support for the show, then please leave a glowing 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean so much to me and makes it easier for new listeners to discover the show. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on most social media platforms. Just search for @Mr. John Clayton. The best place to connect with me online, though, is on LinkedIn. You can find a link to my profile in the show notes. Remember, running your architecture business doesn't have to be hard, and you don't need to do it alone. This is Architecture Business Club.